This episode is sponsored by Shug the Dug Productions. Hello and welcome to Film Pro Productivity, the podcast that helps film professionals and other creative people to live a more focused, effective and happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 42, The Law of Success in 16 Lessons, Part 3. Yes, here we are again revisiting Napoleon Hill's powerful book, The Law of Success in 16 Lessons, and this is the third installment of my breakdown. And if you've not heard the previous episodes in this particular series, then I'd advise you to go back and check out episodes 40 and 41 before listening to this one. It'll just make more sense in sequence. My aim here is to give you a fleeting glimpse of the power that lies within the pages of the book, and in the show notes for this episode I will also give you a link to a free download of a public domain.mobi version of the complete text, which will play in virtually every e-reader except for the Kindle probably, but in the last episode there is a download for a Kindle version, and in the episode before that there is a download in PDF version of the complete text. It's 1,170 pages long, so be warned, you may want to listen to the whole series before you go back and read the book itself. And these can all be accessed via the official website, filmproproductivity.com. Now, before I go on, I want to point out that I do quote with such regularity from the book in these episodes that I won't always identify sections of the text which are Hill's words, and I'll do this really for streamlining purposes. Suffice to say that much of the content is either my interpretation of or direct quotation of Napoleon Hill himself. And the only regular change I make is in making it gender neutral every now and again. It's not really for reasons of political correctness, it's just that I want to make what he says as accessible and relevant for today's audience as he intended it to be in 1928. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. Albert Einstein, unquote. Lesson 6. Imagination. Hill explains that there are two forms of imagination. First, there is what he refers to as synthetic imagination, which consists of organising and putting together recognised ideas, concepts and facts, but arranged in a new combination. Very seldom, he explains, does anyone create an idea or anything else which is absolutely new. Nearly everything known to civilization is but a combination of something that is old. Secondly, there is what he refers to as creative imagination, which operates through a kind of sixth sense and has its base in the subconscious. It serves as the exclusive medium through which basically new ideas or facts are revealed. That's his take on it, and it's an interesting angle which I admit I had never before considered, but that I absolutely recognise. He goes on to say that if you have mastered and thoroughly understood the preceding lessons, you know that the materials out of which we have built our definite chief aim were assembled and combined in your imagination. You also know that self-confidence, initiative and leadership must be created in your imagination before they can become a reality, for it is in the workshop of your imagination that you will put the principle of auto-suggestion into operation in creating these necessary qualities. And before I go any further, I must give you the definition of auto-suggestion because it's come up a couple of times and I do admit that I've kind of skipped over it. Now, auto-suggestion is the hypnotic or subconscious adoption of an idea which one has originated oneself. It's like reprogramming your subconscious mind to believe what you want it to believe. Hill uses it to replace your old beliefs with new ones that will serve you better. And to clarify still further, the Collins English Dictionary defines autosuggestion as follows: a process of suggestion in which the person unconsciously supplies or consciously attempts to supply the means of influencing his or her own behaviour or beliefs. Hill describes imagination as the hub of this course. You will never have a definite purpose in life. You will never have self-confidence. You will never have initiative and leadership unless you first create these qualities in your imagination and see yourself in possession of them. He states too that the imagination can receive impressions or ideas, and out of these can form new combinations. And he gives a multitude, as usual, of real-life examples of how this manifests itself. In one example, Hill drives home that his friend and employer Andrew Carnegie was a man of great imagination, as he first created a definite purpose and then surrounded himself with men who had the training and the vision and the capacity necessary for the transformation of that purpose into reality. Carnegie didn't always create his own plans for the attainment of his own definite purpose. He just made it his business to know what he wanted. Then he found men who could create the plans to get it. Hill believed that this was not only imagination, but genius of the highest order. In this lesson, Hill also leans quite heavily on training the imagination to weave new combinations out of old ideas. And this is kind of interesting to me, as many current authors of new productivity books are simply weaving the old ideas and, frankly, the research that Napoleon Hill did and those who came before him created into their own new works. I'm kind of doing that here, in fact, now that I think on it. He gives more examples in this lesson than in any other chapter of the book, but his point is far easier, I think, for us to understand these days than it was for the populace in 1928. He's effectively saying, dream and use your imagination to help lead you to the attainment of your goals, and that dreams and actions, he states time and again, are closely related. Hill takes the time too to list in his examples several great failures that came about as their instigators had no imagination. And beyond that, he makes yet another interesting point, that the power of decision grows with use. And if you've been suffering at all from choice paralysis, that might give you a bit of hope for the future. In the film which Napoleon Hill made in the 50s, he also said this: if you feel that all of the new ideas have been used up, you are incorrect. The best ideas, he predicts, are yet to be revealed and put into the service of mankind. And he was right. Can you imagine how someone from 1928 will look at all that's been achieved in the years that have followed? You really need to listen to Napoleon Hill, folks. He predicts the best is yet to come. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. A man can succeed at almost anything for which he has unlimited enthusiasm. Charles Schwab, unquote. Lesson 7. Enthusiasm. Hill describes enthusiasm as a state of mind that inspires and arouses us to put into action the task at hand, and that it does more than this. It's contagious and it vitally affects not only the enthusiasts themselves, but all with whom they come into contact. That latter part is especially relevant when thinking back to the lesson on initiative and leadership, as spoken words and instructions without enthusiasm are often ineffective. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou, unquote. Enthusiasm bears the same relationship to the human being that steam does to the locomotive. It is the vital moving force that impels action. Simply mix enthusiasm with your work, and it will not seem hard or monotonous. And enthusiasm is one of the more powerful means by which we may put into action our experience, our education, and our knowledge. Hill points out that the idiom "knowledge is power," though, is only a half-truth. For knowledge becomes power only when it is put into action for the attainment of a definite objective. I think that we all recognise these days that being enthusiastic about what we are doing makes it all more engaging and interesting. And Hill explains that enthusiasm is a vital force that you can harness and use with profit. Without it, we would resemble an electric battery without electricity, he says. And he's not alone in being enthusiastic about us harnessing enthusiasm. Aldous Huxley said the secret of genius is to carry the spirit of the child into old age, which means never losing your enthusiasm. And Dale Carnegie said flaming enthusiasm backed up by horse sense and persistence is the quality that most frequently makes for success. Throughout Lesson 7, Hill gives immense detail and multiple examples of how enthusiasm compels us to act, and how it is contagious to those you act with. Mix enthusiasm with your work. Do something you are enthusiastic about, and you will not get tired nearly as quickly. Hill has a simple mechanical explanation of how enthusiasm spreads. He sees our brains as both a broadcasting station and a receiving station for enthusiasm. It both sends out and picks up vibrations. Just one example of this is taken from Andrew Carnegie. He believed that if you were to turn loose someone with intense enthusiasm in an industrial plant employing thousands of people, this person's enthusiasm would very quickly reach and influence every person in the plant. What's even more fascinating to me is that he said it is also true in reverse. Carnegie had realised that it makes not the slightest difference whether the enthusiasm was negative or positive, constructive or destructive. And I've certainly on occasion felt an enthusiastic ill will spread around a production when something is not right. Usually, though, I have to say, it is a feeling of enthusiastic, creative drive that I find on productions. Examples of that I could give from recent productions would be Make Me Up, which was this great artistic feature film production that was shot in Glasgow. I was so into that. It was amazing. It was just a really rich, creative environment. Also worked on a television show earlier in the year called Guilt, which is coming out. It probably is going to be out by the time this launches. And it felt just so right while we were shooting it. And what I would add to that is that the enthusiasm in those productions and the negativity on other productions usually comes from the top. It's the cold wind blowing from the director or a production company or producer that starts to get a reputation of uncaringness or indifference to how people are feeling. But generally speaking, the environments that I find myself working on are, if I can use the word, warm, creative, and focused environments. Carnegie said also that in his selection of employees for promotion, the first thing that he looked for was a person's capacity to express themselves in terms of intense enthusiasm. To Carnegie, enthusiasm was one of the most important traits necessary for leadership. Hill's pragmatic approach in these lessons raises yet another point, that enthusiasm does not come naturally to some people. And I'll attest to that one too, as I've met some terrific bores in my lifetime. But all is not lost if you feel that he is perhaps talking about you. He suggests that you adopt the habit of practicing enthusiasm in your conversations with your family and your business associates. And he also points out that this habit will make you more popular with those that are close to you. He suggests when practicing this that you read for 10 minutes daily on subjects of your own choosing as a means to acquiring the habit of enthusiasm. And soon, he says, you will have no difficulty in reading in a tone of enthusiasm in connection with the things that you like best, and that in itself will transfer into your day-by-day voice. It's an extension of his auto-suggestion point. And I need to move on here, but yeah, Lesson 7, enthusiasm is yet another powerful ally on your way towards success. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Lesson 8, self-control. Aristotle wrote, "What lies in our power to do it lies in our power not to do. On this subject, Hill begins, "Enthusiasm is the vital quality that arouses you to action, while self-control is the balance wheel that directs your action." So, to be the person who is well balanced, you must be a person in whom enthusiasm and self-control are equalized. Hill examines in this lesson the scope and meaning of the term self-control, saying that a person with well-developed self-control does not indulge in hatred, envy, jealousy, fear, revenge, or any other similar destructive emotions. A person with well-developed self-control, he says, does not go into ecstasies or become ungovernably enthusiastic over anything or anybody. Self-confidence is one of the important essentials of success, but when this faculty is developed beyond the point of reason, it becomes kind of dangerous. I think we've probably all met at least one self-important, egotistic nut job in our lives, and I think that you will agree that they are quite unpleasant to be around. And in exploring this lesson further, he identifies a few traits of a person with great self-control. He says they will not permit themselves to be influenced by the critic or the pessimist, nor will they permit another person to do their thinking for them. They will have taken possession of their own mind and directed it to whatever ends they may desire, specifically in achieving their definite chief aim in life. Next, he says they will stimulate their imagination and enthusiasm until they have produced action, but they will then control that action and not permit it to control them. They will also not hate those who do not agree with them. Instead, they will endeavour to understand the reason for their disagreement and profit by it. And finally, he says they will maintain their health through exercise and diet. In the 1954 film on the laws of success, he goes a little bit further. He adds that as a person with great self-control, you will have to gain mastery over your tongue by acquiring the habit of thinking first and then speaking after you are sure that what you have to say will benefit you and not injure others. A loose tongue is often one's greatest liability. You will also have to exercise self-discipline and master the common tendency to strike back at those whom you have a cause, real or imaginary, for a grievance, because your every thought and every act which benefits or injures another person comes back to you in kind, greatly multiplied. And it's in this section of the film where one of Hill's better-known quotes comes from. He says, "If you feel you must slander another person, do not speak it, but write it. Write it in the sands, near the water's edge. Then move away from it until the tides have flown." Finally, he says, you will have to exercise self-discipline over all of your emotions, particularly your emotions of love, hate, fear, and what he describes as the emotion of sex. These are the big four of your emotions, and they can make or break you according to the extent of discipline you exercise over them. Going back to the book, Hill says that someone with poor self-control may have these traits. They will have a habit of forming opinions before studying the facts, and they will have a habit of spending beyond their needs. And he adds too that this habit will be passed on to their children. Finally, he says, your mental attitude needs discipline and control at all times. Lacking in this particular discipline will drive away friends, destroy opportunities to get ahead, bring on physical and mental illness, and make peace of mind impossible. Hill has a terrific rant in this chapter about people with no self-control mortgaging their future lives to buy automobiles, which is still fairly relevant today, I would add. He who reigns within himself and rules passions, desires, and fears is more than a king. John Milton, unquote. This is a truly vast chapter in which Hill again gives multitudes of real-life examples, but let me move to the end of this sampler that I'm building for you. Hill wants to put forward that self-discipline is the most essential factor in the development of personal power, because lack of it works hardships on those who become its victims, and those who do not exercise it suffer the loss of a great power, which they could use in the achievement of their definite chief aim. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Lesson 9. The habit of doing more than paid for. This entire lesson is devoted to the offering of evidence that it really pays to render more and better service than one is paid to render. Put another way, the habit of going the extra mile is the habit of rendering more service and better service than one is expected to render, and doing it in a positive mental attitude. Later in life, Hill was still pushing this particular lesson, and so it pays to listen up and see how you can utilize it. He refers to this as the magic principle of self-advancement, and I just love that. When you do more than you're paid to do, you will eventually be paid more for what you do. Zig Ziglar, unquote. There are many sound reasons why you should develop the habit of performing more service and better service than that which you are paid to do, despite the fact that a large majority of the people around are not rendering such service. One of the main points that Hill is trying to make here is that by performing more and better service than for which you are paid, you not only exercise your service rendering qualities, your abilities, and thereby develop skill and ability of an extraordinary sort, but you build reputation that is valuable. If you form the habit of rendering such service, you will become so adept in your work that you can command greater remuneration than those who do not perform such service. You will eventually develop sufficient strength to enable you to remove yourself from any undesirable station in life, and no one can or will desire to stop you. This, some of you might notice, is Hill invoking what we might know as the law of increasing returns, and he helps us to understand it with this analogy. The farmer carefully prepares the ground, then sows his wheat, and waits while the law of increasing returns brings back the seed he has sown, plus a many-fold increase. He goes on to give examples of how it has worked well for so many and proves how it is applicable to our life and our work. Henry Ford, he says, received more and better service than average by paying more wages than of average. At a single stroke, through the inauguration of his minimum wage policy, Ford attracted the best labour on the market and placed a premium upon the privilege of working in his plant. And he gives further examples in plenty, by the way. Stores taking back returns without argument in order to keep their customer for a long term would be a good example of this. He goes on to say that you owe it to yourself to find out just how you can apply this law to your best advantage. To help you apply this to your life and work, Hill developed what he calls the QQ&A formula, which is a short-form way of remembering that the quality of service that you render, plus the quantity of service that you render, plus the mental attitude in which you render that service, determines the space you occupy in your chosen calling and the compensation you can get for your services. That's QQ&A: quality, quantity, and mental attitude. Now, as I suspect that some of you will be dismissing this before it truly sinks in, I'm going to extend this section a little bit further. Hill, you see, lists specific benefits to help to convince us that this is not some hocus pocus, but a powerful tactic which will benefit you greatly. This is a list which I took from the 1954 film, incidentally, and I'm just bringing it to you here because I think it hammers this one home. 1, he says this habit will bring you the favourable attention of those who can and will provide you with opportunities to promote yourself into better circumstance. 2, this great natural law of increasing returns will bring back greater than average compensation. 3, following this habit will make you indispensable in your chosen occupation or calling. Therefore, it will place you in a position to eventually write your own ticket. 4, this habit will help you to excel in your line of work because each time you render service, you endeavour to do a better job than you did previously. 5, if you work for a salary or wages, this habit will give you preference when work is slack and others are laid off. That's a very interesting one. 6, it will help you to benefit by the law of contrast. Another fascinating thing I've never heard before, the law of contrast, because the others around you will not be going the first mile, let alone the second mile. 7, following this habit of doing your very best in all of your efforts and doing it in a pleasing mental attitude will improve your personality and make you liked by others. 8, it will also help you to develop a keen and alert imagination because you will be continually seeking new and better ways of rendering useful service. 9, it will inspire you to move on your own personal initiative instead of waiting to be told what to do, a habit which is the first step in leadership. 10, develop greater self-reliance and more courage to move ahead without the fear of criticism from others. 11, the one thing it does which, if it benefited you in no other way, would justify you in adopting it. It helps you to master the one habit which heads the list of causes of failure, that destructive habit of procrastination. 12, going the extra mile influences other people to respect your integrity and inspires them to go out of their way to cooperate with you in a friendly spirit. 13, this habit helps you to develop definiteness of purpose, which is the starting point of all personal success, and it stops you from drifting through life without knowing what you want or where you're going. 14, and here is the grand payoff which this habit gives you. It provides you with the one and only excuse for asking for a promotion to a better station in life or a higher pay. Obviously, if you're doing no more than you are paid for, then you are receiving pay for all that you are entitled, and you don't have a single excuse for asking for more pay or for a better position. So in the hope that you understand this point and appreciate its significance possibly to you, then I will move on to number 15. Last but not least, the habit of going the extra mile will condition your mind to maintain a mastermind alliance with others. And this is important, remember, as organised effort is the source of all power. Render more service than that which you are paid, and you will soon be paid for more than you render. The law of increasing returns takes care of this. Napoleon Hill, unquote. So, to recap on today's lessons. Lesson 6 was imagination. You will never have a definite purpose in life. You will never have self-confidence. You will never have initiative and leadership unless you first create these qualities in your imagination and see yourself in possession of them. Lesson 7, enthusiasm. A state of mind that inspires and arouses one to put action into the task at hand. It is contagious and vitally affects not only the enthusiast, but all with whom they come into contact. Lesson 8, self-control. When you take control over the thoughts you are thinking, then you can take control of your success. Self-discipline is the most essential factor in the development of personal power because lack of it works hardships on those who become its victims, and those who do not exercise it suffer the loss of a great power which they could use in the achievement of their definite chief aim. Lesson 9 was the habit of doing more than paid for. So if you're going to whine about your work, then you're not going to go anywhere. Do the work you have in front of you, then ask what else you might do. By doing this, you make yourself valuable, and you will surely reach a point where you are being paid handsomely. Valuable employees are valuable. This is also especially true when you are working for yourself. And the law of increasing returns simply states that if you are doing more or giving more service than you are paid to do, the universe will reward you with greater compensation than the money you gave up doing that extra work. I'm very much committed to delivering you this 6-part series within the series, and I hope that you are finding it enlightening. I certainly did as I was putting it together, although it was a hell of a task. I realised that there are some big ideas being introduced here in rapid succession, but to quote Napoleon Hill on this, don't be afraid of a little opposition. Remember that the kite of success generally rises against the wind of adversity, not with it. So stick with me on this. We've only got a few more episodes to go. Your call to action today is to take a few minutes to simply consider all that has been said. If you have to go back and listen again with a notepad and pen, then do so. And I've got links to various downloads of the full text on the official website, so go there and grab one if this series on the law of success is hitting the mark with you. Confucius says, "The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones." We've got 3 more shows to go in this book series, so I want you to stay with me. This is valuable stuff, I hope you'll agree. And with it, you can change your life. I'll end with the words of self-help author Karen Salmason, who said, "What if I told you that 10 years from now your life would be exactly the same? I doubt you'd be happy. So why are you so afraid of change? Now, take control of your own destiny, keep on shooting, and join me next time on Film Pro Productivity." The music that you can hear right now is Adventures by Ihumitsu. You can view the show notes for this episode on the official website filmproproductivity.com. You can follow my personal account on Twitter and Instagram at fight_director, or you can follow the show, the official account on Twitter at FilmProProdPod, or on Facebook at FilmProProductivity. Please support the show by subscribing, spreading the word, and leaving an awesome review.